This is the beach. Unfortunately, this is the beach in January. Recently, I took a 2-week vacation on the Oregon coast, trying to escape what scientists have labeled the most depressing week of the year. And just to make absolute sure that I was in the perfect state of mind, I decided to bring my collection of video game related stress balls that I picked up at the Consumer Electronics Show, Penny Arcade Expo, and of course E3. I'm talking about stress balls that promote everything from the Sega Game Gear, to Frontline Fuel of War, to John Deere Harvest in the Heartland. So join me for this very special episode where I squeeze a bunch of balls and rank them. This is the Great Video Game Stress Ball Squeeze-Off. Let's start with the first video game stress ball that I collected all the way back in 1993. That was the first year that I attended the Winter Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, and Sega was giving out all kinds of fun swag, including hats and pins, and this Game Gear themed stress ball. This is by far the oldest stress ball that we're going to talk about today, and also probably one of the simplest. It's just a yellow ball with the Game Gear logo on it. Nothing more. It doesn't use the Game Gear colors or have any design that reminds you of Sega's handheld. It's really just a squishy ball. But you know, maybe that's all you needed to do in 1993. I don't know. Perhaps these companies just hadn't perfected their swag game yet. Despite being a little bit boring, it's still a fun Sega-themed collectible. The squeeze is a little loose, but that of course may have something to do with it being 32 years old and all. It's a cool memento, but I give this stress ball a B- for being a little bit too bland. As you can see, our next stress ball isn't actually a ball. In fact, I would argue that this piece of plastic junk that I picked up at the Ubisoft booth at E3 2002 looks more like a shrunken down thigh master for your hands. It feels cheap, it's disjointed, and it's poorly constructed. You know, sort of like Ubisoft's 2002 lineup, which included a Rayman fighting game, that awful Dragon's Lair 3D, and both Bratz and Cats. 2 different games. As a stress reliever, this thing fails at pretty much every level. The plastic tubes get stuck about half the time, leading to an uneven experience that'll make you even angrier than when you picked it up in the first place. It also makes a loud squeak, and it hurts your hand after only a few squeezes. Look, I don't care if you use it as a stress ball or a way to exercise your hand. As far as I'm concerned, it fails at both tasks. But here's the thing, that's not why I'm giving this an F. Oh no, I'm giving it an F because the whole play to the next level thing is just a reworked version of Sega's famous slogan. As far as I'm concerned, that kind of thievery should not be tolerated. Hey, you remember that famous first-person shooter Frontlines Fuel of War? You know, the military shooter from THQ that was set in 2024 at the height of the global energy crisis. Alright, I'll admit that Frontlines kinda got overshadowed by an entire generation of mostly brown shooters with names like Call of Duty, MAG, and Battlefield. Honestly, I only remember this game because of its unique stress ball, which, now that I look at it, is more of a stress barrel. In that sense, I actually really like how it ties into the whole fuel theme of the game. I also like that it stands up on a shelf. As a collectible for a mostly forgotten game that apparently has now become a cult classic, this actually makes a whole lot of sense. Aside from maybe wanting it to be a red barrel instead of black, I really wouldn't change a thing. However, as a stress ball, this Frontline swag is frustrating to squeeze. It really only works if you squeeze it one way, because it has this bad tendency of jumping out of your hand if you try to squeeze it the long way. Look, it's still gonna get a B for style and a clever use of the brand, but I am gonna dock some points for it being surprisingly hard to use as a stress ball. Out of all the stress balls we're going to talk about today, this one promoting top spin makes the most amount of sense to me. It was, after all, a tennis game from Microsoft, so of course they made a stress ball that looks like a tennis ball. It's really a no-brainer. From soccer to baseball to bowling, they really could have done this with any sport that has a round ball. But even if it is a bit on the nose, I have to admit that this is one of the better stress balls. It's a little hard to tell in this video, but it's actually a bit smaller than the Game Gear ball, which actually makes it even easier to hold in your hand and squeeze. I also love the vibrant colors and the whole tennis ball design. It's small and it fits well in your pocket, making it the perfect on-the-go stress ball. While it's definitely predictable, I'm going to go ahead and give this Topspin ball a B+ for being one of the best all-around stress balls. Now we go from the obvious to the oddball. Now here's a wacky stress ball that I picked up at the Penny Arcade Expo in 2012. On one hand, I kind of feel like I should commend this stress ball for having a unique design. It is, as you can see, a squishy tractor. That's pretty cool, and it's certainly on brand for John Deere. Just from an aesthetics perspective, there's very little to criticize here. Unfortunately, this thing's a nightmare to squeeze. Because of its weird shape, you don't really know where you're supposed to be squeezing, and no matter how much you twist and turn it in your hand, it's just never comfortable. In fact, I found that it would occasionally jump straight out of my hand, which is the one thing you don't want to happen when you're relieving stress. Because of it not being able to do the one thing that you want out of a stress ball, I'm afraid I can't give it more than a C-. However, I do want you to know that this is one of my favorite collectibles of all time, and I'd give it an A+ when all it's doing is sitting on the shelf. Speaking of which, I've saved the best ball for last. Here we have a bomb promoting Gotham Games, the short-lived subsidiary of Take-Two Interactive that published a handful of games between 2002 and 2003. If you don't recognize the stress ball, this is actually a 3D recreation of the bomb that's used in the Serious Sam logo. It makes sense, as Gotham Games was at E3 that year promoting Serious Sam on the Xbox. History aside, this is the perfect game-related stress ball. It perfectly recreates something that's connected to a game while still managing to be comfortable and stress-relieving. Better still, with its flat bottom, it sits on the shelf without rolling around, making it the perfect collectible. And hey, when you actually do need a stress ball, it honestly has the ideal shape. I also love the attention to detail with the fuse. It looks fantastic, and it's even more fun to squeeze. I give this one an A+, and not just because it's a great stress ball, but also because it's the perfect example of how to do video game swag right. Hey, thanks for watching whatever the heck that was. If you liked what you saw here, then you'll be happy to know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Well, except for when I go on vacation for 2.5 weeks. Now, here's the question I have for you. Do you own any cool video game swag? You know, something that came from a convention or an expo or a game that you bought that just came with some extra swag? Let me hear your stories in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back later this week with a review of Lonely Mountain's Snow Rider. Plus, we're going to take a look at the Accolade Sports Collection that just hit consoles. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.